Hello, and welcome to the Vicars Watch Dibley,
the podcast where three priests link our stories with those of a Reverend Geraldine Granger and other TV vicars. I'm Kate.
I'm Jenny.
And I'm Ruthie. This episode, we have watched a different series. So we have watched a little bit of Ballykissangel, and we talk about that alongside the comic relief episode Ballykissdibley.
Well, hello! How lovely to see you all today, and hello to all our lovely listeners.
Hello!
How are we all doing today?
Very good.
Very good.
I just absolutely told a lie.
Me too.
We both just came out there like, yeah, it was so good.
We're having such a great time.
So good. No, absolutely not. Snap. What's that thing you say when you say something at the same time?
Jinx.
Oh yeah, jinx. Ha, you can't speak until I say your full name 3 times and then do a dance twist around.
So
I'm not about that life, don't worry.
Yeah, we're feeling a bit down in the dumps today. So if we sound really miserable in this recording, sorry. We'll try to cheer up.
Why don't we talk about something that we've all loved this week? Because sometimes looking at the bright side of life does help us when we're in the dark. One thing that I've loved this week is I played the new Monkey Island game, and this is going to go right over Jenny and Ruthie's heads. But
Absolutely.
Monkey Island is a point-and-click adventure game, and it's like the hallmark of this type of game. It's really good. I've always loved the series, and I played the new one that was released, and I really enjoyed it. So that's something I liked. It's about pirates. And it's got lots of
Pirate
jokes.
monkeys.
What do you mean when you say a point and click game? As in like mouse? Computer and mouse?
Point and click adventure is you explore in an environment and you click around the environment to discover things, and you're solving puzzles. There's a story, there's quite a lot of jokes in it, and it's like the stereotype of a genre is that you collect everything you find, and solutions to puzzles are you've got to combine random stuff you find together.
Cool.
And you kind of have to do a little bit of lateral thinking, and yeah, it's generally really fun. There's a good storyline element to it, and I really enjoyed it. That's a point and click adventure.
Oh, I like that. That might have just lifted my gaze, to be honest, because this may sum up like the kind of week that I've had, was going to be the tiny candle burning in front of me that's like nearly run out but smells absolutely divine. It's like a Yankee candle, and I was like, no, that's too sad. And then I thought,
No, that's not too sad.
well, this is the journey. Tiny candles. And then I thought, well, actually, no. Gwillian seashells have a new praline recipe, and I tasted it, and it's really good. So I was like, maybe I could do that. Yeah. And then I thought, Kate, when you said about your point and click adventure, I actually went to an escape room at the weekend, my friend's hen do,
cool.
and it was amazing. It's the second one I've done, and I had so much fun. Like, I'm not a logical, rational kind of person, but we had so much fun. So for all of you those that haven't, tried them before, I'd highly recommend. It was really good. The one we went to was in like Guildford, I think. Yeah, really.
They're everywhere now, aren't they?
Yeah, taking over the world.
Do you know what? I keep seeing an escape room type of thing, but for Christmas, a nativity-themed escape room keeps appearing on my newsfeed as this is a really good thing for youth. So, yeah.
What, is it a physical one or a game one?
It's like something that you order, and it's a game that you would play, but it's not like you go somewhere.
Sure.
But it's something that you could do with your youth group or your church or with friends or something like that.
That
so
sounds
like,
amazing.
We should do it.
Cool.
We should do it. The three of us.
Well up for that. Do you have a good Ruth?
Yeah, as me and Jenny have said, actually, I've had quite a difficult week, and it's been quite tricky for family as well, and so it's been interesting. So for me, it's going to be a week of just the little things that have got me through stuff. So things like, I think when we recorded our Remembrance Day episode, I wasn't expecting to do any Remembrance Day services, and then I did 3. So that was suddenly a bit manic. But that was really, really lovely as well, doing all that kind of stuff. And I was quite glad that we recorded that episode, to be honest, because it gave me more things to talk about. So that was a really good thing. And I've just come back from, I'm part of a group called Leading Your Church into Growth. And they are just a fantastic bunch of people. And you know, I think we're going to get onto this later on in the episode, but being with other people who get it, and lots of us are clergy, not all of us though, and just being with people who get it and sitting in the pub afterwards and just having a chat and a chin wag, and they're just a fabulous bunch of people. So that has been a really good thing that I've done this week.
I love that.
Talking about remembrance, we're afraid we need to enter the confessional booth, don't we?
We do indeed. And I'm sure there's other things that have come up in confessional that we've just kind of forgotten about, but I just remembered this one, is that me and Kate just got so excited chatting away that we forgot that Armistice Day, Remembrance Day, is on the 11th because of World War One, not World War Two, which is what we said. And so, whoops, we're sorry. We can't. I mean, I didn't do history past. I'm not sure I even did it for GCSE. So
it's something I know. It's just in the moment. It's one of those things that just flies away from my brain. So sorry about that. Please absolve us.
I can literally feel the absolution coming from our listeners near and far. It's just flooding in like, guys, bless you, bless you, bless you. The Lord sets you free, loves you.
Talking about confessional things.
Yeah, that's a perfect lean into what we're doing today, isn't it, Jenny?
Indeedles. Yeah, I am excited about today because, Caitlin, ages and ages and ages ago, you mentioned to us when we were going through other TV vicars that we might like to talk about, the vicar from, or vicars, the plethora of clergy from the TV show Ballykissangel. If you haven't heard of it, don't worry, you're in good company. I hadn't heard of it at all. No, not a single drop. But actually, it turns out it's quite popular. I think it started filming in around 1996, all the way through to 2001, and spans across 6 series. It kind of features a Catholic priest moving into a new kind of benefice, I suppose, and the kind of ups and downs he goes on. Now, I personally have only watched the first episode, so all of my knowledge and thoughts comes from just that. But because of that, we wanted to also watch, in fact, the thing that triggered our watching of this, really, and interrupt me if I get this wrong, of course, is that, of course, there's a special of the Vicar of Dibley called Ballykissdibley, playing on Ballykissangel, where the Vicar of Dibley then meets this priest who moves into the benefice, so Father Clifford. So today we're going to be looking at that kind of, I suppose, episode in a bit more detail. It's only, 10 minutes long, I think, that special episode for Comic Relief.
It wasn't long at all.
So it's a quick dive in, but there's so much that I think that's come out of the first episode of Ballykissangel. And so much we want to bring out of that special episode as well with our beloved Geraldine.
Yeah, so we're going to first of all talk about we've watched one episode of Ballykissangel and talk a little bit about that because there's parallels with previous things that we've talked about, and then talk about this Comic Relief special as well. And one of the big obvious contrasts that we could talk about with Ballykissangel is it's set in Ireland with Catholic priests, and we have already talked about Father Ted, although the main character, the main priest in the first episode, is actually English. He's come over from Manchester, I think it was. Manchester. Oi, oi, oi. And he's come over, so there's another... Sorry, Mancunians, I'm just being a bit racist.
Go on.
There's a whole cultural kind of divide between them, and the first person that he interacts with for a long time is a bit like, oh, right, hello, who are you? You're just coming over here and trying to understand us and stuff like that. So Father Peter Clifford is kind of our key clergy person in this episode. Yes. And what did you make of him? And what did you make of the first episode as a whole?
Yeah, so this was my first time watching an episode of Ballykissangel again. I was aware of it, but had never watched it. I just knew it existed. I really liked it. I think one of the main differences between this and Father Ted and Vicar of Dibley is it's more of a dramedy than a comedy. There's comedic elements to it, but it isn't that kind of fast-paced jokes comedy that you get with Father Ted and Vicar of Dibley. And I think
I didn't laugh much, if at all, in this episode.
It's more of a focus on the relationships between the church and the community, and I think particularly the tensions that there are between kind of Father Peter being English coming into Ireland, and I think also Assumpta, who's the other main character, who is the landlady of a local pub. She's also, I think, feeling a lot of hurt in relation to the church as well.
Great name as well.
Yeah, I hadn't come across that before. I think that's an interesting thing, is the set up for episode 1 of Ballykissangel actually did give me some feels in terms of comparing it to episode 1 of the Vicar of Dibley, with immediate kind of, not necessarily love interest. We don't necessarily see any of Geraldine's love interest in episode 1, I don't think. But that kind of whole, someone comes into the parish that's not really wanted, and immediately you're picking up on all this kind of like background feelings and things like that. The thing that was very different for me when Father Clifford moved into the parish is we saw him in his ordinary wear for a long time. For like a good 10 minutes of the around hour-long episode. He just looks like a normal guy, and you're kind of watching this dude on a bus, and then he's like, oh, I don't want to get the bus, I'd rather walk. And I'm thinking, no, in retrospect...
Jenny, he didn't say it that quickly, did he?
No, he didn't say anything quickly.
We all agreed before recording this, like, the way he speaks is something a bit more like this.
I quite like walking. I don't think I'll take the bus.
I have to say, though, I was like, if I lived my life, like, cut down half the speed that I do, I might be a more gracious person of peace instead of like, this hyperactive little whizzy nut. But yeah,
whereas I'm one of those people who, if you send me WhatsApp voice messages and you're taking too long, I'll listen
I will
to them
double time you.
double speed.
Double speed you.
I need to confess, I did end up speeding the episode up.
Did you?
I was a little bit short for time, and I was
brilliant.
having problems with technology, and I was like, I just need to listen. I just need to watch this really quickly.
He does speak slowly, but watching him in thinking about the character in retrospect, I was like, oh, that's such a Vicar thing to do, to arrive like undercover, to do like a holy pilgrimage from 3 miles out of the parish to like walk in and be like, hey God, what you've got ready for me. And already in episode 1, I feel like he's trying to get the parish on his side. Like, he doesn't let on that the confessional tumbled off the truck and down the hill. By the way, this is massive spoilers for anyone who's thinking of watching the first episode.
Spoilers for episode 1.
And hasn't yet. Yeah, okay. Let's prepare you. Just prepare you. Just prepare you.
It came out a long time ago.
It came out a long time ago.
That's true.
Yeah.
It came out, so I would have been 6 years old when it came out.
Yeah.
So it's so weird to think was like, I don't know, reviewing it. Anyway. I think in retrospect as a character, I actually quite like him so far. I think he's made a good first impression, and I'm sort of seeing his heart, which is nice. Which made me think, I don't know, I don't want to give it away too much, but I wonder if I'll be seeing more of Father Clifford. That sounds weird. I just mean I want to watch more episodes.
Romantically, or?
Absolutely not.
So one thing I found really interesting about this episode was the setup of the parish priest, who is Father McAnally, who I think, from what I could work out from this episode, is kind of like, he is what we would call the priest in charge, or I guess team vicar. Then he has priests in these other churches in his parish who might be curates, in like the old sense of the word, as someone who's sharing the cure of souls.
This is where we need someone who is Roman Catholic and can inform us as to, is this usual practice of, you've got a boss in charge and then you've got extra priests as well. And also, could they let us know if this is a regular thing, that you just turn up to a parish without visiting it and just move in immediately? Well, because that's weird.
And without knowing where you're going to be living, or where's all his stuff?
Yeah, he just turns up with a rucksack.
I mean, Geraldine only turns up with a suitcase in that first episode, and no one knows she's coming, and she clearly hasn't visited. But that's like played for a really quick gag.
Where if this is a drama series, you need the build-up.
Yeah.
or just the you know, someone just saying, "Oh, I recognise you. I know, yeah, the English person's back," kind of thing.
Yeah.
Anyway,
yeah, and then also happening in this episode, you've got this subplot of the confessional booth, and there's this guy who wheels and deals around a village and has bought the presbytery.
it's a super fancy confessional.
Yeah, but yeah, he owns a house that Father Clifford lives in. Brian Quigley is the landlord, but he's also cut a deal with Rome to get these super, super fancy confessional booths, which have electric doors, leather seats, and a fax machine.
And it's a shame, really, because I feel like Father Clifford doesn't want it, and he tries to do the right thing with saying, no, we don't need it. And then, like you say, Father Frank is pro. The community seem to be like, well, maybe. And then I felt really sorry for him, because he's made to sort of try and defend it to a news reporter. Oh, no. So that's like another whole storyline going on, isn't it? Like, come on, defend your church. Like, tell us why this is such a good thing.
One of the key things that happens in this episode is about the confessional that appears and the swanky one, and there's lots of things to do with it. But we don't know enough about confessional at the moment in order to talk about it properly. We've not been able to do the research. But I think, and we're going to make a contrast and comparison with this person in a bit, that actually we might research it more and look into it, because we're hoping at some point in the future to do an episode where we talk about the hot priest in Fleabag. And there's a really key scene in that TV series with a confessional. And so I think when we get to that point, we will go away and do our research and talk about it properly.
On a much more frivolous note about that confessional booth, though, you know what? I can sympathise with the priest having a comfy seat, because those clergy I know who do formal confession in a confessional booth, they will set times and they'll be sat in that booth for quite a while for anyone to come and drop in. So actually, the priest, I'd want a comfy seat.
Maybe a snack machine in there as well.
A little vending machine. Little fridge.
Kettle.
Oh, coffee. Nespresso machine.
But not a fax machine. I feel that's disruptive.
Is that you just fax in your sins? Fax machines. That's so old school.
I was trying to work out what possible scenario you'd need a fax machine.
I wonder if that's like the tiny bit. Is that the tiny bit of comedy that's coming out in this? Or are there confessionals that do have fax machines? We should research that.
We should research as well. Let
Just
us
in
know
case.
if you're into ultra modern high tech confessional booths. Let us know.
Yeah, be in touch.
There's got to be like a website online and stuff like that. Yeah. So one thing that kind of has come up quite a lot in this episode that we wanted to talk about is the kind of romanticising of clergy, and particularly of Catholic clergy, which seems to be, well, from the spoilers that we've read of what happens in the future in this episode, and talking about Fleabag again, that's a big thing, of romanticising Catholic clergy as the kind of forbidden fruit.
Ooh.
And did you find Peter hot?
He was conventionally attractive.
Do you know what? I actually I think that the only reason I would say yes is because he appears to be a good egg. Like, he keeps secrets for those who he should keep secrets for. He's gutted when he doesn't make it to give the last rites in time. Like, he's got a good soul. He doesn't get angry about anything. He doesn't mind asking the bigger questions, and he's God-focused. And so because of those things, I would say, yes, he's got some things going for him that's good.
Oh, Jenny, you're just much better than me that's just looking at him and going, is he hot?
Not
and you're
at all.
actually looking at the soul and going,
That's the bit. That's the bit that's sexy.
He seemed a little bit...
Sexy soul.
I don't know. I feel like we didn't see much of his character. Like, maybe in future episodes we get to know him more, but he just felt a little bit...
Did he feel a little bit bland?
Yeah, I was trying to avoid the word bland.
The Reverend Bland.
He felt a bit like a bland, not a wet blanket, but like he was just neither here or there.
A little bit pale. A little bit like a white A4 plane.
Like, what I want to know, what are you passionate about, Father Peter?
Yeah, wearing passions. Well, I think that we might see perhaps where they come out. But I have to say, coming back to that scene again, there's a scene where it's played that he doesn't have transport, he doesn't have to drive. He gets a call in the middle of the night to go out to do the last rites to somebody, and he tries, bless him, first of all, to steal a motorbike. Not great, although he's technically his anyway, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, he ends up waking up Assumpta by knocking on the door late at night, and she drives him. And he's like just gutted that he hasn't made it in time. And she's like, yeah, what difference does 10 minutes make? And he talks about the difference that it made to his wife, who is absolutely gutted that, you know, he's turned up and he's late. And actually you get to see something of his heart for ministry, which is really exciting. And that's the bit that makes me interested in this as a programme that's clergy based. Yeah. Because there is something really wonderful that I'm discovering as I'm watching more Vicar of Dibley, Revd, bit of Father Ted, Ballykissangel. Is that, now this might be quite sad, so bear with me, but I when I'm watching it on the screen, I'm like, oh, you get it. I feel like I'm watching a friend, or I'm like, yes, this is it, this is so true. Or like, not all of it, but parts of it. Like I think I mentioned maybe last episode or the one before, I'm rewatching Rev again, and it's actually feeding my soul. I'm like, yes, I get that. So there's something about that I find really exciting. There are days when I get home from a day of working and I go, oh yeah, I can't bear watching anything like that. But then there are those times when I'm like, oh yes. I'm amongst people that get it. Do you guys feel that, or is it just me? Am I a big weirdo?
I think there's a degree of that we have definitely formed a parasocial relationship with Geraldine Granger.
Oh, that's a nice word. What does parasocial mean?
Ooh, parasocial relationships are one-sided relationships, often with someone who is a celebrity or a fictional character.
Are you suggesting
it's true?
Yeah, that Geraldine isn't really our friend?
She's not a real vicar. Come off it.
Very often you see it a lot with social media people, you know, influencers, where you learn a lot about their lives, or you feel like you know them and you know like intimate stuff about them, but they don't know you and you don't really know them.
Yeah.
That's a
Stacey Solomon.
Relationship.
I'm sure that Stacey Solomon and I would be best friends.
Oh, that's so sweet. I love that.
But yeah,
I think it depends on how well researched a series is. So things like Rev, it definitely does that because there was a lot of research into it, and I think all of us know clergy who were asked questions about it, and therefore it relates to it better because people have done the research and the homework. I think if people are just doing stuff and they haven't actually thought about how does actually a clergy person think and work, and why is this stuff important to them, then it doesn't work in the same way.
True. That's true. And I think coming back to a common theme across like those different TV programmes with romanticising the clergy is actually what's hilarious about Ballykissdibley is that the only person romanticising Father Clifford is our beloved Geraldine. Like, let's just face facts here for a second. And actually, and I didn't think in Ballykissangel, obviously there was a thing that he was a young, single, eligible man who was relatively attractive. And mysterious, maybe, and had a good soul. But that wasn't really, no one was going, wow, look at the new vicar. He's a bit of a looker.
Did I catch in the Ballykissangel episode, in the immediately after Assumpta had dropped Father Peter off and she was talking to Neve was saying something, they had an exchange, and I'm pretty sure Assumpta indicated that she was really liking Father Peter, and then she discovered he was a Catholic priest, and isn't that her life? Or did my brain just add that whole load of subtext to their conversation?
I think there's a suggested sexual tension. I think it's immediately built up that that's gonna become a thing later on. But no, I think you're right. I can't remember.
I think that Father Clifford reveals he's the new priest in the car. So there's no time for her to say, ooh, or like catch some feels, if you will.
Well, no, I think she picks him up and they are kind of vibing.
Oh, I see. Because she's like, are you going to live here? Or like, are you visiting?
Maybe she's like, oh, a single young man has moved to the village.
Maybe,
Ooh.
but Sumter seems like a bit of a badass to me. I don't think she's a sort of person that would, like before I met my lovely husband, of course, I would meet someone and be like, oh, I wonder if this could be a thing. Literally, like almost, actually, is that appropriate to say? Well, it is. I'm just a romantic person. I over-romanticize things, especially when I, haven't met my beloved yet. So I wonder if maybe she's like that, but I don't get that vibe from her. To me, she feels like someone who's like, I'm not going to take anything from anyone, and I'm not here for a relationship. I'm here to grow my business. I'm here to work hard. I'm here to love my community. But that could be wrong.
Yeah, I mean, so for a Sumpter, Father Peter being a Catholic priest is a turn-off.
Big time.
But what do we think the thing is about Catholic priests? Why are they so romanticised? Because you have, there's that calendar of hot priests that comes out of Rome, isn't there? Or is it?
We've talked about that before, haven't we?
And there's this trope, we see in Fleabag, and I think we see quite a lot of the seduction of the Catholic priest.
I think I know what it is, right? Because I was just thinking, imagine if it was a calendar of hot physicists. Wouldn't have the same appeal, right? A calendar of hot butchers wouldn't necessarily have the same appeal. I think it's for people like me that are sexually attracted to high moral code.
You see, I thought it was, but sorry, I didn't.
You're
not
suggesting
pushing it aside.
The butchers are immoral.
But
sorry, everybody.
I thought that it's
or a physicist.
So you know how, in romance fiction, there's this trope of soulmates or love at first sight or being the one person who the bad boy will love or
I love that
commit
trope.
to. Is it a sense of being the romantic dream is I am the one woman who this man will he'll turn aside all this his commitment not to love women because he loves me so much. He will put aside his priesthood for me. Is that a thing?
Yeah, I think it is, but I think that's a disappointing road to go down just for all our listeners who are who like me are romanticising and have I think that is a trope for films but not for real life.
It's interesting because I've known when I was growing up, my dad was an archdeacon and we lived in a cathedral close, and someone in the cathedral chapter was a former Catholic monk and his wife was a former Catholic nun.
Yeah, you hear these stories, don't you?
So there are people who, and there is occasionally you have Catholic priests who have moved to the Anglican Church because they fell in love. So it's not that it doesn't happen. It's really interesting that it's so romanticised. It's really rare for it to happen. Yeah.
I just think about all the novels I read now with rakes in them.
Yeah.
Not as in gardening rakes.
It's like the inverse. It's like the inverse of the scoundrel rake.
So what do you mean? I don't get it. What's a scoundrel rake?
Like a womanizer in kind of Regency speak. You describe someone as a rake.
I thought you meant like a sexy gardener.
Like a garden rake.
Yeah.
Ooh, garden
with his shirt unbuttoned as the wind blows.
I think we know our
Mrs.
picture
Chatterley.
for this week. But like in Bridgerton, the first series of that, Simon's described as a rake and just a bad boy.
Gosh, I'd never picked up on that language before. Intrigulant. That's not a word, by the way. Just a word. If we're thinking of words, intrigulant is not one. Neither is j'agree. It doesn't mean I agree in French. My friend actually used it in her oral exam in year 10 because she thought it was actual French because I just said it all the time. I'm really sorry to say, guys, it's not.
So
yeah.
Anyway, we're whittering on a little bit. Shall we move on to start talking about the comic relief episode? So this was released in 1997 as part of the comic relief, I guess we call it a telethon. It's a televised fundraising event in England, raising money, and there's usually specials for popular shows. And this one was Vicar of Dibley. In fact, there's lots of Vicar of Dibley comic relief specials. Yeah. This is the first of them.
Is it the first one?
This is the first one.
Oh, that's good to know.
I think doing what we'd all want to do, which is if there's two very popular TV shows about vicars on the BBC. Let's bring them together. What happens when Geraldine and Peter meet? And as a sidebar, this comic relief episode, Ballykissdibley, confirms that not only are Ballykissangel and the Vicar of Dibley in the same universe, but also Father Ted, because Ballykissangel also has a crossover episode with Father Ted.
Yeah.
So
well, they appear in a dream in the Christmassy one. So either the Christmassy Father Ted episode. So yeah.
So is Ballykissangel a TV show in Father Ted? In which case, Vicar of Dibley would be a TV show in Father Ted. Oh my goodness, we're going too deep down this rabbit hole.
Oh my gosh. This is getting into like Marvel lore and phase 1 and phase 2 of how everything's connected to each other. So we have this short episode of Vicar of Dibley, which is Ballykissdibley, in which the premise for it is that Father Peter Clifford has come over to do an exchange with Geraldine Granger, which we'll get onto in a bit. And Geraldine talks about this is happening with David Horton, and Geraldine's going, he's just going to be a boring, unattractive Catholic priest, and opens the door and whoo!
Yeah. She calls him Father Wendy, doesn't she?
Oh, yeah, going back to Sister Wendy and her art programmes.
So, isn't it interesting that Geraldine is doing exactly what David Horton was doing before she arrived, which is stereotyping and expecting what this clergy person is going to be like. David Horton assumed that Jerry was going to be a dude.
Bloke with a beard, Bible, bad breath.
But Geraldine assumes that any Catholic priest must be old and withered and boring. Which
holy.
True. Yeah.
Set aside.
Really interestingly, this is released just before Series 2 of Vicar of Dibley and during Series 2 of Ballykissangel. Which is interesting. So where Geraldine is she's just been accepted by the community, sort of.
Yeah.
I guess Father Peter's in a similar place.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting that the premise is a clergy swap because I'm not quite sure how that would work. I mean, it's a great thing to talk about for an episode, but actually there are rules about who can preside and do things. So do things like communion and that kind of stuff in different churches. And a female ordained person in the Church of England would not be able to do anything over in a Catholic church in Ireland. The rules would be different for Peter, wouldn't it? He'd be all right to preach and that kind of thing in the Church of England. He wouldn't be able to preside, I don't think.
It's less of a... I read it as less of a clergy swap and more of a experience exchange. So less of a vicar swap. But, like, we're going to... In the interest of ecumenical relationships, and so that these Catholic priests can meet female priests and actually, we all realise that everything's okay, really, and we're all lovely. We're going to do this experience exchange. So I imagine if Geraldine went over, she wouldn't be doing the vicar stuff, but she would be meeting people in the parish. She would be
seeing what they do.
Seeing what Father Peter's job is like, which, actually, these aren't so rare. Like, these do actually happen. We have things called... We've got someone coming to our patch for study leave from another part of the world.
Wow.
Cool. And we've had people come... We had a Methodist come to visit our deanery to see what we were doing. From an American Methodist came over.
Cool.
So these sort of experience trips, stays, do happen.
You're making me think of those, experience day packages that they sell in like WH Smiths, where you can go and drive a Formula 1 car and come along and hang out in Dibley. £90.
I'd pay for that.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Because Peter does immediately get that experience, doesn't he, Father Peter of Dibley, where Geraldine's explaining that she has very normal, sensible parishioners.
And then they all appear. Before we talk about that, I want to talk about having visitors in the vicarage, and particularly when you get like a student on placement or one of these visiting clergy coming to see what you're doing. Do you let them stay in your vicarage? Do you have sort of a set of unspoken rules in your head over who you'd say yes to and who you wouldn't? Because Geraldine's obviously said, you know, David Horton has offered, in a very roundabout way, offered to have this Catholic priest stay with him. And Geraldine says, oh no, it's nothing, there's going to be no problem with him staying with me because he's going to be an old man. If she'd known that he was a young man, would she have
changed her mind?
Oh, she absolutely would have had him stay with her.
But maybe David Horton would have stepped in a bit more.
The truth is that the answer should have been no, right from the beginning, as a single ordained female clergy. And I only say this because I believe this is the inherited truth. Whether we disagree, like it, blah, 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 no, you can hash that out. When I was a single ordained female curate, me and my TI put some serious boundaries in place so that not even like this might sound a bit too far, but basically you have to appear as though nobody could ever get any misunderstandings about who was staying at your curatage, if you will. So obviously boyfriends, absolutely not. Male family members without their spouses or partners, probably not.
What?
Yeah.
Oh my
Unless
goodness.
it was like pre-agreed. So that like how you appeared was that you were whiter than white, if that makes sense. Now I can see some fists of rage appearing. I understand that. And I have to say, like, I'm very content that I trust myself and what goes on in the vicarage, but there have been times when I've called the archdeacon and said, look, just the archdeacon is like the sort of how do you describe the archdeacon? They look after an archdeaconry, a wing of churches in the diocese. So, for example, in Peterborough diocese, we have 2 archdeaconries, like big areas, you know, where there's churches within them. Oh gosh, can anyone think of a better term? Well, if anyone doesn't know what an archdeacon
is like the supervisor of the parish clergy. They, on behalf of the bishop, they manage us. They make sure that, you know, they're the one we turn to when we have problems, and they're the ones that kind of keep an eye on us.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah.
And they hold the legal boundaries. They have to do a lot of disciplining. Like, that's perfect. Yeah. So when I called him and said, look, just so you know, this was in COVID and I was really unwell. And Chris, my now husband, came and lived at the vicarage for like nearly 3 months. Well, first of all, to look after the dog while I was in hospital, but then afterwards to support me as I recovered. And I was like, just so you know, this is happening, but he is here. And I think that was because I wanted him to know, and also in case any of my parishioners felt uncomfortable or had questions or even reported it, hopefully they'd speak to me before that, but everybody knew where we were, if that makes sense. But that's where I've been from. What about for you guys, or what do you make of that?
For me, I probably wouldn't want to have a single young man I don't know come to stay in my vicarage. But then like that's more of like, to be honest, any strangers coming to stay the night as a single person, I don't think that's very safe. You know, I don't know who this person is. It just doesn't feel right. Family members, my brother can come and stay with me. Like, it's just anyone challenge me on that, I'll be like, you're disgusting, that's my brother.
Yeah, it's tough, isn't it?
And so there is part of me, having grown up in vicarages, that has always felt really on guard and really observed over if I've got male friends coming over to stay. Like, even when I was a teenager, I didn't like bringing my male friends into the house because the house was like really visible. It's like the area. But at the same time, the feminist in me says it's just nonsense. Like, because I know nothing's happening, they know nothing's happening. Like, and yeah.
Yeah, here comes the rage.
Here comes the rage.
No one's business.
So people are
Interesting.
so obsessed with the sex lives of clergy, aren't they? And I think it is part of this kind of forbidden fruit. And this is, the assumption of people, the assumption that people have about different things. So, at the time when I was a curate, I had an other half, and there was talk about whether they could come and stay over. And it was all a bit like, oh, well, they should be in the spare room, and I'm not really sure about it, but it's okay, I'll trust you. And it's like, well, part of the assumption is the only time you can have sex is in the evening when you're staying in the house. Like, there's no other boundaries for that. And so I'd had friends come and stay over who just so happened to be male. And do you know what? There was one week where there were about 3 different people who all came and stayed over. So my neighbours must have been like, flipping it, what business is she up to? And part of me is thinking, do you know, it is none of your business. And I also get the kind of, you're supposed to be a pillar in the community and live up to certain standards. But we're human and we're broken and we're messed up. And actually, we just need to look a bit more normal, I think, with lots of stuff, and it just makes me a bit cross.
Yeah, and
the assumption is that it's the same sex is different genders as well.
Yeah, like I was going to say, let's call out the heteronormative. like why is it shady to have lots of men staying with you, male friends staying with you, and not like if you had a revolving door of young women? But also, like, surely it's more deceptive to be meeting people in secret than to openly be having friends come to stay with you. Like, surely it's much more above board if everyone can see that you've got friends coming to stay, rather than you sneaking someone in through the back door.
Yeah. It's all about having appropriate boundaries for yourself and for others, isn't it? So, like, I would feel, like you said, Kate, I'd feel really weird about someone staying overnight who I didn't know very well. Obviously, unless it was like, I don't know, super urgent, or they were, the trusted friend or partner of someone else, obviously. But visitors to the vicarage, it is a difficult one. And I think it's different for different stages of your life. And, if you're working with others, who lives in the house, whether you've got, a spouse or children or other visitors, it is different. But I think, putting in appropriate boundaries with someone that you trust so that you can keep accountable if that's important to you with stuff is good. But obviously, so it's the kind of sexual side, but I guess there's also the kind of like safety side as well. Because that even goes for people not staying overnight. Like, there have been times when I've let people into the vicarage who I shouldn't have done, if I'm honest. And, and I think that's a thing as well that is good to talk about sometimes, just to think about, the kind of process you go through when someone rings the doorbell and is like, I need to come in, I need to talk to you now, like, I need to, please let me in, something urgent has happened. You can't always read people quickly enough to decide what's safe.
Well, one thing I was going to say with all of this is we've just automatically talked about partners and friends, but often sometimes we have people, like in this episode, where clergy come along, or people who are training and things like that, would come along to just kind of experience. So whilst we were training, we went off to different places and experienced stuff. Sometimes I stayed with the vicar because it was people that I knew, and other times I stayed with someone else, because sometimes actually it's quite nice to get that distance if you're working with someone, to just spend all your time with them. But I mean, we had someone come along who's an ordinand, who's someone training, who is a friend, and so of course he stayed at our house and just hung out, and it was great.
You see, I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
I couldn't do it. I desperately need my own space at the end of the day. Yeah. And I would do it, but it would be really costly for me. Like, I do not, I wish I did so much. Maybe the Lord will give it to me in time, but that natural gifting of like hospitality and hosting and be like, yeah, come and stay at ours, because I think it takes so much energy for me to think about what other people need that I can't like replenish myself and other people. And maybe that's a bit of an overstatement. I'm sure I will learn in time. Unless I know them really well, I'd find that really tough. But that's the whole point of having a vicarage, is that there's a room for the vicar, there's a room for girl children, there's a room for boy children, and then the fourth room is meant to be like the bishop, isn't it? Whenever he or she decides to stay. That's historically why we're given these massive houses, for hospitality. So I'm going to try and get better.
Yeah, and really interesting when my dad was acting Bishop of Edmondsbury in Ipswich for a while they were in a vacancy, and my dad they kind of stayed, they camped essentially in the Bishop's Palace in Ipswich. And I went to stay with them one time, and they had a whole there was a room, the only room which was furnished was the kind of official visitors room.
Yeah.
For people who were visiting the diocese, visiting the bishop, and that was the only room that had beds. I slept in it once, and then another time I slept on a camp bed in a different room.
Yeah. And the reason we're talking about this, because of the big thing that happens in this episode that we have so far avoided, is the kiss in
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Ballykissdibley and Ballykissangel, and goodness me, suddenly for charity they're snogging.
Snoggatron.
Well, it's not really snog, is it?
They've let down their defences.
Yeah.
And they've had a couple of glasses of wine from the looks of it. They've been having a chat. Comparing
to heart,
their
if you will.
villages, I think commiserating of the madness of their parishioners. And the theme, of course, is charity raising. You had Alice has been dressed like a bee all day, and Hugo is finishing every sentence with wibble.
Great idea.
Wibble.
And
Wibble.
Geraldine,
Or is it dibble?
It's wibble.
Wibble.
It's wibble because it's a very Blackadder uses that word as well. Wibble. It's a funny word.
It's a funny word.
They've got a creator in common, Dibley and Blackadder, I think.
Oh, right.
That maybe end up in a confessional as a correction. But Geraldine has purchased a kit for selling kisses for charity.
Snog for God.
Snog
and
for
charity.
God. And she, it starts out with her, she's saying, oh, actually, I wish I was celibate, because then I wouldn't have had this stupid idea, but no one wants to kiss a vicar, do they? And then Father Peter says, well,
I'll give you a schnock.
That wouldn't be appropriate, but, if you asked me, I'd say,
I've got
right.
a fiver.
I've got a fiver. Well, first of all, it starts with a £1 coin,
Yeah.
doesn't it? £1 for a kiss. And then he's only got a fiver, so ramps up a bit. Before we get into that, can I just double check before I put my foot in it, and just for the listeners' joy as well? Have either of you ever done or taken part in a kissing booth for charity?
No.
Not even
Why?
in school?
Have you?
No.
Have you done it at
No,
school?
I haven't. No, I
thought you were setting
there
that up.
was there was a kissing booth for charity at my school.
Really?
Can't remember. I think it was when we were in sixth form, yeah, but I didn't take part.
There's
Nobody wants to kiss a pre-vicar.
Oh no! I think there's a weird thing
just
about
be
consent
generally.
with a kissing booth and that kind of
Yes.
thing. Because there's that Netflix film, isn't there, called Kissing Booth, and I watched it first and was like, oh, lovely, cute, drama, and then I was like, this is really messed up. So,
But it works
It's
in
really
Jerry's favour, I
weird.
suppose, this time.
Sorry.
But yeah, it is a strange concept because you have to kiss the person for money, which is something we probably don't necessarily think is a great idea. But that's her way in. And I think it is innocent, actually. She gets out the packet, she talks about fundraising. They both feel good about it because there's obviously a little bit of, like you say, vibey chemistry there. One thing leads to another. £5 note is exchanged. What was it? A kiss on a hand, a kiss on a hand, a kiss on a cheek, a kiss on a cheek. Geraldine then makes a joke about kissing another couple of cheeks, but we skim over that very quickly. And it's just the one kiss left, which is obviously a lip kiss.
at which point, a sumpter turns up.
Dun, 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 dun.
Do-do-do.
Which hints that there's definitely a romantic connection then to come in Ballykissangel.
Because Assumpta's really, really upset to find Father Peter snogging Geraldine. And I think probably feeling that he's being hypocritical in that he's okay kissing this vicar. but maybe not kissing her. And then she storms off, but doesn't she give Geraldine 20 quid as well?
Well, she storms off, and then he realises his fiver is actually 20 quid.
That's it, yeah.
And so, well, she's like, well, in for a penny, in for a pound.
Yeah.
Or £20 in this case, and just leaps on him over the sofa.
And that's where it ends, isn't it?
That's
So we
where
never
it
get to see what happens, but because he's about to chase after a sumpter, and then they both get distracted by the £20 note, and then one thing leads to another, as in the push. Push comes to shove.
Sorry. Do you think that the reason Father Peter is so okay with snogging Geraldine, aside from the fact that this is a comedy skit and
they've had wine,
do you think it's because they kind of have this knowledge between them that it's not anything more than a kiss?
That's interesting.
I have only one thing to say, Caitlin. Imagine going away on clergy conference or a clergy parish day away and potentially kissing one of your colleagues. Is it a thing, or is it okay because they're clergy? And I think herein we find our answer.
No, I'm not saying but I'm just trying to rationalise why, because in that first episode of Ballykissangel, when you've got the Neve and her boyfriend turned fiance asking about whether or not they can live together, and he's like, oh, I'm a Catholic priest, I can't condone
try before you buy.
But in this, he's all in. And
it is it... I think it's a moment of weakness.
It feels a bit too intentional to be a moment of weakness, to be honest.
I kind of understand what you're saying about actually they're two clergy people. They're both single. Geraldine is definitely frustrated with this situation. They're not going to see each other. It's not like being at clergy conference and you're going to bump into your colleague every time.
Honestly, unbearable.
They live in different countries, and actually, yeah,
it's so funny though. It is strange, and I guess it's so hilarious, and we're all like it is a big deal for Comic Relief Special because it is a bit out there.
It's also Dawn French's thing, right?
Yeah, snogging everyone.
Yeah,
she does love a kiss, doesn't she?
Who doesn't? Well, quite a few people do.
But yeah, I mean, it's it is good. Sorry.
But that kind of leads us into my kind of musing about, is it because they're both clergy and they've let their barriers down? Kind of leads us to something we hinted at earlier in this episode, which is when you are with other clergy, how you end up revealing things of yourself that you don't get to reveal to anyone else. And there is, I think, within the college of clergy, as we call it, and that kind of friendship, you get to just, funeral directors have a shared sense of humour, service people in the army have a shared sense of humour, and I think that's true of clergy too, that kind of camaraderie.
Definitely.
There's something about just being able to not have to explain terms over and over again, and people just get it and know it, and I mean, we've all been involved in, hanging out together on together in person or on Zoom or something like that, having a drink together and just going blah, 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 and just an easiness and a naughtiness that comes out with clergy.
and not having to watch yourself in a way that when you're with anyone else, there's always a sense of, I need to make sure that if I say this, I won't be misunderstood, and I've got to watch my behaviour to a certain extent. Where with other clergy, there's a certain just understanding that if I say this blasphemous thing, of course I don't actually mean it. Or if I say this thing which is, indiscreet, I don't really mean it. There's a sense of you're allowed to let out those things, let out the blasphemy, let out the really dark sense of humour, which you just can't do.
But no, you're right, Kate. There is something about being able to let loose a bit more, and because when you're in church, you're open about stuff to a degree, and I think actually openness and vulnerability as clergy is really, really important and something that we should be doing, but you also need to protect yourself as well, and talking to people who get it and can be there. And there are certain things that I would not discuss in that kind of thing. So if there's safeguarding things going on, actually you can't talk about that, and I wouldn't. But there's something about letting off steam, isn't it? I think we all need those kind of outlets.
And just
It's
a mutual
healthy.
support of someone who's in a similar situation. And so you have Geraldine and Father Peter commiserating and comparing experiences. And maybe they've just decided, you know what, I really want a snog with someone who's not going to start projecting onto me, or who is uncomplicated. Like, because Geraldine's option is where we find out in season 2 is Owen.
Oh, yeah. That was such a bad idea.
Owen, who apparently used to go to a girls' Catholic school, according to Ballykissdibley.
Yeah, that was also weird. How he creepily snuck into there.
Overall, what did we think of the Ballykissdibley comic relief special? Yay or nay? Did we enjoy it?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's not the best comic relief special, I don't think.
I think they
but
get better.
If it's the first,
Yeah.
it was
Do
good
you
fun.
know what? I've just thought, if you were brand new to the Vicar of Dibley and you were introducing it to your friend, you were proposing it as a great series to watch, and you watch that little 10-minute, in some ways you get a glimpse of almost like
All the
most of the
characters.
chief, all the characters and a lot of chief themes.
you do.
There's a load of kissing, a load of awkwardness, a load of hilarity. Here it is in 10 minutes. But yeah, I definitely did. I did enjoy it. And I loved actually watching the first episode of Ballykissangel and then seeing Ballykissdibley straight after.
Yeah.
I thought that was really cool.
I'm so glad, because when we were planning this, we were a bit like, oh, this is a bit... What's Ballykissangel? And
I was like, it sounds really
what's that
weird.
about?
Like, yeah.
But, you know, I also really enjoyed
I repent.
Ballykissangel. I might watch more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did
See,
find
I'm not sure I will.
Really?
In contrast to you two. That's what I wanted you guys to say first. But it didn't hook me in the same way for the first episode. Maybe if I watched a few more, not even the tease of a will they, won't they with Assumpta and Father Peter, which normally always gets me in. I'm a bit like, nah.
I think it's the sort of thing I would enjoy watching and then discussing with Jenny. Like, it's like,
There we go.
I think for me, I need to have someone like who I can make fun of how slow Father Peter talks with. Like, because...
So listen out for our new spin-off podcast, which is just Jenny and Kate talking Ballykiss Vicars.
I have to say, I did find myself Googling the cost of the box set, series 1 to 6. So who knows? Father Christmas may bring me a little gift in his sack this year. Oh, Ballykissangel.
Ballykissangel is
Here we
a yay
come.
from some of us and an A from some of us.
But what do you think, dear listener?
Yeah, and let us know.
Let us know.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Vicars Watch Dibley. Thank you to Toby for editing our ramblings.
Any views expressed in this podcast are our own and don't necessarily represent those of the Church of England or any other organisations with which we are affiliated.
And as always, bless you for listening.
What do you call a whale not wearing underpants?
Well...
A free willy.